Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a fantasy horror film, GOGOL Part 1, The Beginning. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie starts with GOGOL, a young judicial clerk gifted with supernatural power. GOGOL needs to write a report about a woman who is murdered, but he cannot focus because he's terrified of corpses and blood. After a while, a well-known detective arrives to help them with the case. Suddenly, GOGOL suffers from seizures and visions of how the woman was killed. Then he unconsciously writes words on the paper. As the detective and his fellow investigator exchange views, GOGOL interrupts them, saying that the victim knows the killer. The detective is confused by what GOGOL said, so he asks for the crumpled paper, where he wrote the words volcano, cross, and lamb. The detective analyzes the clues and finds out the word volcano is the name of the woman's horse. So they summon her coachman, who is also her servant. The servant says that he's a Christian, so the detective asks for his cross. However, he's hesitant to give it. The detective grabs it from him, then shows GOGOL a cross-shaped scratch mark on the woman's palm. The detective then concludes that while the servant was strangling the woman, she grabbed his cross necklace, which left a mark on her palm. He also concludes that he secretly likes the woman and calls her Lamb. Then the servant cries endlessly like a baby. He admits that he's madly in love with the woman, so he wasn't able to control himself when he found out that she'll marry someone for money instead of his hormones. Finally, the detective congratulates everyone as he declares that the case is closed. It turns out GOGOL has a supernatural power, wherein during his seizure, he sees visions that could help solve a crime. Before heading home, GOGOL and his servant go to a shop to buy all the copies of his books. Then they burn them at home. GOGOL is a frustrated writer. He's offended by the critics' criticism of his first book, so he ends up buying and burning them. The next morning, the detective visits GOGOL to praise him for doing a great job in their last case, and to inform him that he'll go to investigate the mysterious murders of some women in a province. GOGOL expresses his desire to accompany the detective, thinking that he might be of help since he's from that province. Without hesitation, the detective invites him. On their way, GOGOL sees a very beautiful woman riding a Ferrari horse that disappears in the woods. Soon they arrive at their destination, where they are warmly welcomed by local officials. The chief of police even offers them a place to stay, but the detective declines because he prefers to stay in a hotel. The detective gets furious later because the local officials didn't follow the order to keep the dead body in an ice cellar, so he commands them to dig it up immediately for investigation. Later on, a woman guides them to the hotel where they will stay. Afterward, they study the record of the cases and conclude that the Horseman is the killer because he's always seen at the crime scene. Thereafter, the detective starts to examine the victim's body. It seems like her heart was severed by a doctor or a butcher because it was perfectly done. GOGOL feels uncomfortable, so he goes out to breathe some fresh air. Unfortunately, he loses consciousness when a Ferrari carriage hits him. He dreams that the detective is removing his organs while he's in a coffin. Moments later, the beautiful woman he saw in the woods earlier appears again. He then regains consciousness and sees the beautiful woman named Lisa, who's living in a mansion with her rich husband. She's the woman that GOGOL saw in the woods and also the owner of the carriage that accidentally hit him. That night, GOGOL eats with Lisa and her husband. After a short while, Lisa suffers from unknown pain, so her husband puts a small bottle on the table. Lisa takes it and then leaves. GOGOL worries about Lisa, but her husband assures him that everything is fine, and Lisa just forgot to drink her medicines. It's getting late, so GOGOL bids goodbye. As a courtesy, Lisa's husband gives him a Ferrari horse to ride back to the horse motel. In the woods, because of the horseman's presence, the horse runs uncontrollably, causing GOGOL to hit the windmill blade, then fall to the ground. After a while, a woman named Oksana, the miller's daughter, arrives. She sees that GOGOL is terrified. So to calm him, she offers him to drink some milk tea at home. While drinking tea, GOGOL warns Oksana to be careful because the horseman has already killed 3 women. But he suddenly loses consciousness as Oksana mentions that the horseman has not just killed 3 women, but many. It's revealed that Oksana put sedatives in his tea to put him to sleep. The next morning, GOGOL wakes up with mud on his feet, wondering how he's able to go back to the hotel. He immediately tells the detective about last night's incident, so the detective asks the woman in the hotel if there's a windmill near the area, but she hesitantly answers that it was gone a long time ago. The woman looks uneasy, as if she's hiding something from them. Instantly, GOGOL, the detective, and local officials go to the windmill. GOGOL is confused because the windmill working just fine last night is now broken. However, he sees his lost coat on the ground, which intensifies his belief that it wasn't a dream. Afterward, one of the officials reveals that 30 years ago, a drowned, good-looking woman was found dead in the river near the windmill. He also adds that during that time, lots of women were murdered as well. The detective is very disappointed because they didn't tell him that the same pattern of killings had already happened 30 years ago. While the detective and GOGOL are talking, Lisa arrives on a horse. She's extremely worried about GOGOL because the horse he used that night has returned full of thorns and scratch marks. After a while, GOGOL is overjoyed to know that Lisa loves his books. She even encourages him to continue his passion for writing. It's visible in GOGOL's eyes that he's falling for Lisa, but he's trying to hide it because she's already married. That night, GOGOL dreams of Oksana, telling him that she'll help him find the Horseman, but she also needs his help. GOGOL suddenly wakes up, without knowing what kind of help Oksana needs. In the morning, GOGOL and the detective go to the abandoned windmill and find a hand on the ground. Later on, it's revealed that it belongs to the woman in the hotel. They try to confront her, but she strangles GOGOL, trying to kill him. When the detective tries to stop her, she throws him into the barn. Luckily, the chief of police shoots the woman directly in the face before she kills GOGOL. When they search the woman's house, it's uncovered that she's a witch. They also conclude that she's the Horseman because the murder weapon and the Horseman sign are found in her house. The chief of police invites GOGOL and the detective to celebrate, but they refuse because they need to go home, thinking that the case is already resolved. That evening, GOGOL is surprised when Lisa visits him and shares an intimate hormone night with him. In a spur of a moment, he wakes up and realizes that everything's just a dream, but seems so real. He then goes out, only to see the detective and the Horseman are fighting inside the burning barn. He tries to help him, but it's too late because the barn has already collapsed. Everyone believes that the detective and the Horseman died in the fire. However, GOGOL believes that the Horseman is still alive because his remains aren't found, and the witch is just his accomplice in leading them astray. Because of that, GOGOL decides to stay and continue the investigation. Later that night, the Horseman comes to the house where the witch's body lies, and then resurrects her. The witch apologizes because she wasn't able to inform him of GOGOL's supernatural power. Unfortunately, the Horseman doesn't listen to her, but covers her face with his hand as the witch screams to death. A few days later, another murder takes place. A greasy woman nicknamed Ms. Greasy died suddenly, and her lover witnessed it. According to the lover, they found a red jacket outside the house. Then suddenly, the candle was burned with a green flame, and blood came out of it. Later on, the red jacket seemed to come to life. Then a bloodied pig's head appeared in the window. In great fear, he ran away in 4 limbs, but he hit the wall, causing him to lose consciousness. When he woke up, he was shocked to find that the woman had been stabbed to death. According to old folklore, the devil throws a red jacket on the doorstep, which symbolizes conjugal infidelity. Ms. Greasy is actually having a greasy hormone affair with her lover because she's already married. Early in the morning, GOGOL wakes up with scratches on his back. He's confused because he remembers making love with Lisa, then it becomes Oksana. Soon after, he finds out Ms. Greasy's lover is imprisoned because the police conclude that the lover is the killer, since he was with the victim when she was found dead. They also think that he's the Horseman, since the Horseman's sign is found on the crime scene. However, GOGOL isn't convinced, so he investigates more with the help of the blacksmith, who's good at sketching. GOGOL starts his investigation. He interrupts Ms. Greasy's funeral and interrogates her husband. The husband says that he's drinking alcohol with his daughter's boyfriend, while his daughter, Periska, was with her friends on the night of the killing. When his first wife died, he remarried Ms. Greasy without knowing that she didn't treat his daughter well. As soon as GOGOL examines the alleged sign of the Horseman, he suffers from seizures again and visions the crime, as he unconsciously draws a linden tree. He realizes that linden is a slang word for fabrication, indicating that the evidence is fabricated to show the Horseman is the killer. First, the symbol is painted upside down. Second, the Horseman only targets beautiful young women, not someone greasy. Lastly, the Horseman commits a crime in the forest, not in the house. Later on, the murder weapon, red jacket, and candle are found in the husband's house. Eventually, he admits the crime, saying that he did kill his wife because he's sick and tired of her infidelity. He then pleads to attend his daughter's wedding before he's sent to jail. However, GOGOL isn't convinced by the husband's confession, so he wants to conduct an autopsy. A drunk doctor with a bad reputation, nicknamed Dr. Vodka, helps GOGOL in autopsying the woman's greasy body. To ease GOGOL's discomfort from seeing such a fat corpse, Dr. Vodka invites him to drink vodka. Dr. Vodka concludes that Ms. Greasy didn't die of stabbing, but from a ruptured heart due to fear. Thereafter, the drunken GOGOL goes to Lisa's mansion to clarify if she ever went to his hotel the night before his supposed departure, but she denies it. While they're talking, the candle suddenly loses its spark. When Lisa lights it, GOGOL is reminded of the case that he needs to resolve, so he immediately bids goodbye to Lisa. Meanwhile, Periska wakes up in the middle of the night because someone's calling her. When she's about to check it, the ghost of her stepmother appears and grabs her foot. Out of fear, she runs into the forest where she sees the Horseman. Luckily, GOGOL helps her hide behind the tree. When they are about to go home, Periska's boyfriend arrives and thinks that she's having an affair with GOGOL, so he punches him, causing him to lose consciousness. GOGOL then dreams of Oksana. She explains that if he wants to find the Horseman, he needs to control his supernatural power. And in order to do that, he needs to focus and forget everything that troubles his mind, especially Lisa. GOGOL is disappointed when he finds out Oksana pretended to be Lisa and made love with him. He then asks her to stay away from Lisa, which angers her. It's obvious that Oksana is jealous of Lisa because she has feelings for GOGOL. The next morning, GOGOL wakes up with a black eye, wondering how he's able to go home. He then checks the blacksmith's drawings of the women the Horseman killed. Later, his servant informs him that they found the trunk from the detective's belongings, with a note that in the event of unforeseen circumstances, the trunk should be given to him. However, they cannot open it since there's no key. Periska's wedding finally arrives. Dr. Vodka finds hallucinogens on the candle found at the crime scene. When he lights it, GOGOL hallucinates and sees his greatest fear, the critic of his book. Then they conclude that when Ms. Greasy and her lover lit the candle, they hallucinate and think that the killer, who was wearing a pig mask, came out of hell to punish them for their infidelity. Ms. Greasy died of fear before she was stabbed by the killer. It's then revealed that Periska kills her stepmother, and her father just takes the blame because he doesn't want his daughter to suffer. When GOGOL confronts the husband, he strangles him as Periska and her boyfriend run away into the woods. The chief of police helps GOGOL escape from the husband. Then they quickly go to the woods to chase Periska. Periska doesn't notice that her boyfriend falls to the ground because the roots of the tree curl up on his feet. She escapes and rides a Tesla boat with someone whom she thinks is her boyfriend. But soon, she's terrified to figure out it isn't him, but the ghost of her stepmother. Ms. Greasy then brings her to the Horseman. GOGOL and his team try to help Periska, but the ghost of Ms. Greasy stops them. When Dr. Vodka lights the candle with alcohol, the Greasy ghost hallucinates and sees GOGOL as an evil spirit, so she runs her greasy ass in fear. Unfortunately, they aren't able to save Periska. The Horseman kills her, then leaves his iconic mark on the ground. The next day, GOGOL gathers his men and asks for their help in hunting down the Horseman. Unbeknownst to them, Oksana is in the old mirror, secretly listening to them. Then GOGOL gets the locked trunk from the detective. Luckily, the blacksmith is able to unlock it, but when GOGOL touches it, he visions that the Horseman's next victim would be Lisa. The movie ends with the detective, who they thought was dead, standing at the top of the cliff. GOGOL Part 2 V. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with the two sisters, Sister Young and Sister Old, secretly meeting their boyfriends. Their strict father dislikes them because they belong to a low-class society. One afternoon, Sister Young goes to the field to bring food to her boyfriend, who is a shepherd. She expresses her desire to get married when she reaches the legal age. However, her boyfriend is hesitant because he thinks that no one would like to marry a poor and ugly man like him. Their conversation is interrupted when a sheep runs into the woods. As they chase it, they are frightened when a mysterious creature appears in front of them. They run for their lives, but the boyfriend doesn't notice that his girlfriend falls to the ground. As he looks for her, he screams to death when the mysterious creature appears again. GOGOL is a young judicial clerk gifted with supernatural power. He gathers his men, determined to hunt down the Horseman, the one responsible for the murders of many women in the village, as shown in the first episode. They open a trunk left by the detective, who was in charge of the case but seemed to have been killed by the Horseman. They see a paper with 12+1 written on it, and another paper with the dates when the Horseman killed his victims. The last date written is October 2, which will happen a day after tomorrow. They conclude that the total of 12+1 is 13, which is equivalent to 13 holidays a year. 4 holidays have already passed, and the Horseman has already killed 4 women. There are still 9 remaining holidays, so they assume that he'll kill 9 more women. Unbeknownst to the team, GOGOL immediately hides the file that contains the detective's research about his life. One day, a sorcerer who's believed to be taking souls of innocent people arrives in the village. The priest pleads to the police chief to detain the sorcerer, but he refuses because there's no valid reason to detain him. Later that day, Sister Young's family visit GOGOL to ask for his help in looking for her. They inform him that she still has not returned home after taking food to her boyfriend. GOGOL believes that Sister Young is still alive, so he promises her family that he'll do his best to bring her safe. Afterward, the rich married lady, Lisa, arrives. She tells Gogol that while she's taking a naked bath, a woman appeared before her and warned her to stay away from him. Gogol explains that the beautiful woman is a ghost named Oksana, who was found dead in the river near the windmill 30 years ago. Oksana has hormone feelings for Gogol. That's why she tries to scare Lisa to stay away from him. Their conversation is interrupted when Sister Young's boyfriend arrives, covered with blood. Gogol and the police chief interrogate him and ask the whereabouts of his girlfriend, but he just screams the word beasts. Thereafter, as per Gogol's advice, the villagers go to the woods to look for Sister Young. Gogol then sees Oksana and expresses his disappointment because she keeps on harassing Lisa. Oksana is very upset, so she tells Gogol that she'll not help him in mastering his supernatural power again. A little while longer, they find an almost decomposed body, which they think belongs to Sister Young. The police chief then concludes that the murderer isn't the Horseman, but Sister Young's boyfriend. But his conclusion is proven wrong when Dr. Vodka checks the vodka-smelly organs, only to find the body doesn't belong to a human, but to a sheep. Despite Dr. Vodka's excellence, the police chief still mocks him because he can only examine corpses but cannot operate on the living. It's then revealed that years ago, Dr. Vodka stopped curing people because he blamed himself for the death of his young patient. While Dr. Vodka is washing his bloody hands, Gogol collapses and has visions that Sister Young is still alive, and the Horseman will kill her on the upcoming holiday. He also sees a fiery autumn flower. That evening, Gogol checks the file that contains the detective's research about Gogol himself. He finds out that he had 5 siblings, but 2 died in childbirth and 3 died in infancy, and only him, the eldest of all, survives. Gogol gets more confused when he reads the highlighted part of the file, the mystery of birth, a dark one. He stares at the autumn flowers drawing and remembers his dream when the ghost Oksana said that he can enter their world anytime because that's his gift. Thereafter, he puts his hands on the drawing and finds himself in a different world. Once again, he sees the fiery autumn flower, dripping with blood. In a creek, he also sees a crying woman covered with cloth. Although Gogol knows that Oksana is upset with him, he still goes to the river to ask for her help. Soon after, 2 ghosts pull him under the river, where he sees Oksana. He asks for her help in interpreting his visions about the autumn flower. Oksana answers that the autumn flower is also called the blood flower, which blooms once a year during the intercession holiday. It blossoms under the moon where the gold is hidden. She also adds that only an innocent person can pick this flower to uncover the gold, but in order to obtain it, they need to kill another innocent person. Oksana asks Gogol for a tongue massage in return for her help, but it disappoints her to see the rejection on his face. She tells him that he should seek help from his beloved Lisa instead of hers. Gogol clarifies that there's nothing between him and Lisa because she's already married. To calm Oksana, he just allows her to kiss him. Afterward, Oksana tells Gogol that the answer to all his questions is in his childhood. She then pushes Gogol into the river. Under the water, Gogol sees his younger version alongside his parents. The doctor informs them his sickness is incurable and he'll die just like his other siblings. His parents suddenly disappear and are replaced by Lisa. Lisa disappears as well and is replaced by the woman covered in white cloth, who he had seen in his previous vision. When the white cloth is removed, a young lady with a mole appears, asking if he is her destiny. Suddenly a fire breaks out, causing him to wake up. When Gogol goes home, he sees the sorcerer talking with someone. He then goes to church, and the priest warns him to stay away from the sorcerer because he's known for corrupting souls in the Bear Creek. He then asks about Lisa, who is praying near them. The priest says that she might be praying for her sinful husband who doesn't go to church. While Gogol is thinking about his vision, Lisa arrives, so he asks her for directions to Bear Creek. She urges him not to go because it's believed that evil hides there. They're falling for each other's hormones, but trying to avoid it because Lisa is already married. The night of the holiday arrives. Gogol goes to the blacksmith, who's in charge of sketching the clues, to ask him if he can accompany him to Bear Creek. But he refuses because the place is dangerous. However, Gogol is persistent, so the blacksmith just gives him a gun to protect himself. On his way to the creek, Gogol encounters women who are burning sheets. Then a young lady with a mole asks him if he's her destiny, but he just ignores her. According to the old custom, a woman who intends to get married should burn sheets. Meanwhile, in Bear Creek, the sorcerer commands Sister Old's boyfriend to pick the autumn flower. He picks it up, and as it falls to the ground, the gold suddenly comes out. When the boyfriend takes the gold out of the water, it quickly becomes a stone. The sorcerer tells him that he needs to kill an innocent person to get the gold, but he's surprised that the one he needs to kill is his girlfriend's younger sister. Gogol arrives and shoots the boyfriend. Unfortunately, he had already slit Sister Young's neck. It's revealed that the sorcerer is the beast that kidnaps Sister Young, and he deceives Sister Old's boyfriend because he also wants to take his soul. Immediately, GOGOL brings the injured Sister Young to Dr. Vodka. However, he's afraid that she might also die in his hands. With GOGOL's encouragement, he starts the surgery that saves Sister Young's life. GOGOL is confused because the woman in his dream isn't Sister Young, but a woman whom he doesn't recognize. He thinks that their predictions might be wrong because the Horseman wasn't able to kill during the intercession holiday. Later that night, GOGOL is surprised to see Lisa in his room. Afterward, they admit their love for each other. Unbeknownst to them, the ghost Oksana is in the mirror, peeping at them. The mirror then breaks because of her extreme jealousy. The next morning, they're all surprised that a young lady was murdered in the woods. The Horseman killed her last night, which proves that their theory is right. He kills during the holiday. GOGOL thought that the Horseman's target is Sister Young, so he's very disappointed because he's deceived by him. It's revealed that the young lady was the one GOGOL saw in his visions, and also the one who stopped him and asked if he was his destiny. The next holiday arrives. To prevent the Horseman's dark plan, GOGOL and the local officials order the villagers that all women under the age of 30 should stay at home, which causes a commotion among the villagers. That evening, GOGOL asked his old servant if something strange happened when he was a child. The servant just answers that nothing special happened, aside from his constant illness. GOGOL feels that the servant is hiding something from him. It's then revealed that before GOGOL was born, his father met a stranger with bandages on his face, who told him that he can have a healthy child, but it depends on how far he's willing to go. GOGOL's father is eager to do anything just to keep his beloved son alive. The holiday passes without a new victim. However, the next morning, they find the Horseman's mark in the houses of 8 women. Dr. Vodka checks the mark and assumes that the dog's blood was used in writing it. In history, the Horseman only kills poor women. However, they also find the mark in Lisa's mansion. GOGOL suggests gathering up the young women and hiding them on an abandoned farm, but the police chief is hesitant because he suspects that GOGOL is a Horseman's accomplice. To sum up, the Horseman has already killed 5 women, and GOGOL assumes that the 8 women, including Lisa, will complete the detective's prediction that the Horseman will kill 13 women. Immediately, GOGOL goes to Lisa to inform her of the situation. Lisa's husband arrives, then he invites GOGOL to eat with them. While eating, GOGOL tells Lisa's husband that they need to hide Lisa and the women whose houses were marked by the Horseman, but he refuses because he thinks that Lisa is safer in their mansion. Later that day, as the blacksmith's daughter is walking, she hears a dog crying in a house. Out of curiosity, she enters the gate and peeks through the house's window. She's terrified to see a dog hanging beside a widow who's doing magic tricks. The widow then appears behind her, inviting her to go inside. Out of fear, she runs back to her house and tells her father the things that she saw. Afterward, a man is seen outside the widow's house, observing her actions. After his conversation with his daughter, the blacksmith goes to GOGOL to report the situation. GOGOL instructs the blacksmith to fetch the police chief and brings him to the widow's house. Immediately, GOGOL goes to the widow's house, but he's alarmed to see a man stabbing the widow. GOGOL tries to stop him, but he hits him, causing him to faint. When he wakes up, the widow is already dead. The police chief doesn't believe that GOGOL can't recall the killer's face, and thinks that he's behind the murder, because he seems to be the Horseman's accomplice in covering the secret. Later on, they find a silver nail on the witch's hand, which was used to crucify witches in the past. GOGOL concludes that the woman is a witch and the Horseman's accomplice, who marks the houses using dog's blood. As GOGOL suffers from seizure, he unconsciously writes Latin words on the floor using blood. GOGOL pleads with the police chief to start gathering the women because they don't have enough time, but he's still weighing the situation as he doesn't trust GOGOL anymore. Later that night, GOGOL asks the ghost Oksana if she can read the Latin words that he unconsciously wrote during his seizure, but Oksana cannot understand it as well. He then gets the stake that was used to kill the witch, but Oksana gets scared because it's a holy weapon against evil spirits. GOGOL assumes that the man who killed the witch will come back to complete his unfinished ritual, so he immediately asks help from the local officials. After a while, a man goes to the house where the witch's body lies. Unbeknownst to him, GOGOL and his team are already waiting for him. After a fast and furious fight, they knock him down and detain him in jail. Now that the killer is caught, the police chief apologizes to GOGOL for thinking that he's the one who murdered the witch. They interrogate the man. He says that he's an exorcist who's called by the church to look for the evil spirits and perform purification rituals to them. According to him, the Latin words that GOGOL wrote are a spell to cast out evil. Little did they know, the exorcist only has a wooden hand, so when he removes it, the rope tied to him loosens. He commands the police chief to lock himself in the jail as he runs away with Gogol as his hostage. The exorcist asks Gogol's help in completing the ritual against the witch. Gogol agrees. Meanwhile, the witch suddenly resurrects. Luckily, Gogol and the exorcist arrive on time before she hurts Dr. Vodka. In the jail, the police chief is freed by a local official. Since he no longer suspects Gogol, he orders the officials to bring the 7 women to the farm to hide. The exorcist brings the witch's body to the church because he plans to use her as bait to summon V, the head of the evil spirit. As preparation, he locks the doors and windows and marks a circle around them as their protection. He needs to be cautious because he already lost a hormone let-go hand in their last encounter. That's why he's using a wooden hand. This time, he's confident that he'll defeat V because of the Latin spell from Gogol. In the meantime, the local officials bring the 7 women to the farm to hide them from the Horseman. Unfortunately, the Horseman finds them by tracing the women's hormone smell and kills the officials. An official survives and informs the situation to the police chief, but it's already late. The Horseman successfully murdered the 7 women. The police chief is very disappointed and orders to find Gogol because it's his idea to gather the women in one place, which strengthens his suspicions that he is the Horseman's accomplice. The exorcist starts the ritual when the witch resurrects. The witch tries to hurt Gogol, but he's protected inside the circle. Oksana, together with the ghost in the river, go to church to help Gogol. Every time Gogol steps on the wooden floor, the circle breaks. That's why the witch is able to hurt him. Gogol unconsciously steps on the wooden floor again, and the witch grabs the chance to kill the exorcist. Gogol has no choice but to continue the ritual alone. On V's arrival, the walls of the church collapses, and the broken glass falls on Gogol. Despite Oksana's warning to avoid eye contact with V, Gogol still looks at his eyes. But fortunately, before V gets Gogol's soul, he's able to cast the spell that killed V. Eventually, Gogol dies as well. The movie ends with a flashback to when Gogol was born. It's revealed that he was dead at birth, but he suddenly comes to life when the stranger with a bandage on his face arrives at the scene. Gogol, Part 3, Terrible Revenge. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie starts with Dr. Vodka, a drunken doctor who cannot accept the fact that his dear friend Gogol died during his encounter with an evil spirit. The blacksmith tells his daughter Vasilina the sad truth that Gogol passed away. She then bursts into tears and runs away. They are brokenhearted because they believe that Gogol is a good man. In the police station, the police chief is talking to his assistant. His assistant informs him that he has already found a place where they will secretly bury Gogol's body. The police chief believes that Gogol is associated with the woman-hunting Horseman because he's the one who suggested hiding those women on the farm where they got killed. Gogol's old servant talks to the police chief. Because of his request, the police chief allows a priest to pray for Gogol's soul in the graveyard. Oksana, a ghost who shows her ghostly love in Gogol, goes to the place where his body lies. Oksana wonders where Gogol is because his soul isn't among the living nor the dead. The next day, Lisa, Gogol's hormone favorite, attends Gogol's funeral together with her husband. Dr. Vodka wants to say his final words before burying Gogol, but the police chief interrupts him. After a while, Vasilina arrives, screaming that Gogol is still alive. The police chief is in a hurry to avoid commotion because the families of the murdered women are about to come, and they are all blaming Gogol for the death of their loved ones. Meanwhile, Gogol wakes up in the afterlife and sees his father, who keeps apologizing to him. Soon after, a bandaged man appears, saying that Gogol's father is burning in the fire of hell because of him, which confuses Gogol a lot. Gogol then wakes up in the real world. Everyone is shocked as he gets up from the pit. Immediately, they bring Gogol to his hotel room. Dr. Vodka explains that Gogol's resurrection isn't a mystery because it's simply a 2-day lethargy where he fell into a deep sleep. Lisa leaves anxiously, as if something is bothering her. Soon after, the police chief arrests Gogol and informs him that the women he suggested hiding on the farm were killed by the evil Horseman. Gogol cannot believe his ears. He then remembers that he mentioned their plan to Lisa's husband, as he persuaded him to send Lisa and the other woman to the farm for shelter. However, the police chief doesn't believe this smelly bullshit, thinking that Gogol just wants to put the blame on Lisa's husband because he likes Lisa. Gogol then concludes that Lisa's husband is the evil Horseman. In the river, Lisa's husband approaches Oksana. She's surprised because she's a ghost, and people can just see her if she wants to. He tells her not to be frightened because he's there to offer her a deal. He wants her to keep Gogol away from the village. In return, he'll bring her back to life so that she can easily win Gogol's heart. However, every good thing has its price, and whoever chooses to undergo the ritual of resurrection will go straight to hell after life. Oksana is hesitant to accept the offer because she knows that Lisa and Gogol are in hormone affection with each other. But Lisa's husband assures her that Lisa will not get in her way again. Eventually, Oksana agrees. In the evening, the police chief's assistant questions his decision to detain Gogol and his servant because he believes that he isn't the killer. In fact, the killings happened even before Gogol arrived in their village. However, the police chief is convinced that Gogol planned everything to mislead them in this case. In the prison, Gogol is confused when his servant tells him that he might not be able to conquer death for the third time. The servant doesn't have any choice but to tell Gogol the secret that he's been hiding for a long time. It's then revealed that Gogol was dead when he was born, and in order for him to live, his father gave his life to the bandaged man. Later that night, out of anger, people go to jail to burn Gogol to avenge the murdered women. The police chief tries to stop them, but he loses consciousness when a man throws a stone that hits his head. The blacksmith tries to save Gogol, but the people hit him, causing him to faint. When Vasilina looks up and whispers, it suddenly rains heavily, causing the fire to die. But as soon as she collapses, the rain stops. Since the fire is already out, the people just hang Gogol. Instantly, when the rope is put around his neck, Gogol gets the vision that the Horseman is Lisa's husband and his next victim would be Lisa. The detective, who they thought had been killed by the Horseman, arrives and rescues Gogol. He threatens the people that if they don't stop, he won't hesitate to shoot them. In fear, the people leave one by one. Thereafter, the detective tells them that when the witch died, he went to her house to investigate further. But the Horseman arrived and fought with him, then vanished when the fire started. Everyone assumes that he's burned to death, so he just goes with the flow and watches from afar. It's known that the Horseman kills during the holiday, and the next will be in 3 days. But the detective says that they're mistaken because the closest holiday is that very night. Because of the evidence, they assume that Lisa's husband is the Horseman, so they immediately go to his mansion. Meanwhile, in the cave, the Horseman starts to resurrect Oksana. When the Horseman touches her heart, water flows from her mouth. That same night, Gogol and his team go to Lisa's mansion, searching for her and her husband. After a while, a bird structure similar to what he saw in his vision captures Gogol's attention. When he touches it, a secret passage leading to a cave opens suddenly. Thereafter, they see the unconscious Oksana, but Lisa's husband suddenly arrives and drives them away. As soon as he raises his gun, the police chief shoots him, killing him instantly. They are confused by the sudden situation because they don't expect that the muscular Horseman could be killed by just one bullet, even with his muscles being bulletproof. Later on, Oksana comes to life, but suddenly, the real Horseman arrives and kills her. After he kills Oksana, everyone is shocked that the Horseman transforms into Lisa. It's then revealed that 163 years ago, Lisa and her elder sister are heartbroken when they find out that their father had been killed in the war by the warlock, who is said to be a sorcerer. The siblings go to the forest to seek the old witch's help to avenge their beloved father. According to the old witch, there's one way to subdue the warlock. It's to lock his neck with the enchanted ring. When the ring is around his neck, he'll lose his supernatural power and will become mortal. Before they leave, the old witch warns them that if they use the enchanted ring for revenge, God will punish them, and they will experience all kinds of sufferings. But the siblings are determined to avenge their father, so they immediately take the enchanted ring and leave. Lisa then comes up with a plan, using her horny sister as a hormone bait to seduce the warlock, so they can get close to him. That same night, they secretly enter the warlock's place. Then Lisa pretends to be a soldier, offering the warlock a captured woman. As soon as they enter his house, the warlock tongue massages the sister intensely. While he's distracted, Lisa puts on the enchanted ring around his neck, which weakens him. Finally, they successfully capture the warlock. Then they decide to take a rest at the cliffs before they go to the military base. Warlock feels that the sister likes him, so he uses her feelings to deceive her. He then tricks her into removing the enchanted ring, so they can both escape and live together. The sister falls for it, but luckily, Lisa wakes up when her sister is about to remove the ring. The siblings intensely fight, but the sister slips off the cliff and dies. Out of anger, Lisa beheads the warlock. However, the beheaded warlock suddenly curses Lisa to have eternal suffering. In order to survive, Lisa needs to kill 12 women and one person who has been resurrected. Afterward, Lisa transforms into the evil Horseman. It turns out the clue 12+1 that Gogol found in the previous episode represents 12 women and one resurrected person. Lisa explains to Gogol that she has to hunt and kill the women for her own survival. However, she can't finish her words because the detective immediately locks the enchanted ring around her neck. Soon after, the detective orders GOGOL and the police chief to bring the dead bodies outside. He also asks them to get a carriage, because he needs to send Lisa to their main office. Finally, Vasilina wakes up, but his father gets angry when she mentions that she called the rain to put out the fire to save GOGOL. Suddenly, Vasilina tells her father that her doll is asking why he's angry. The blacksmith then breaks the adult doll, as he mentions that it cannot speak because it's just a bunch of straw. Vasilina gets very upset about that. The detective starts to interrogate Lisa. It's then revealed that the man they killed isn't really Lisa's husband, but just her servant who makes potions to help Lisa maintain her human form, which will otherwise collapse into the Horseman form. He falls in love with Lisa, but she cannot return his love, so he just pretends to be her husband and stays by her side until the end. Meanwhile, the police chief's assistant is talking to an old maid at the restaurant. The old maid takes advantage of the assistant's intoxication and asks for information about the case. The old maid seems to have a hidden agenda because she gets the assistant drunk for the case information. Later that night, the blacksmith and Dr. Vodka find that Vasilina is missing, so they look for her in the woods. Soon after, they find Vasilina surrounded by birds. Vasilina apologizes to her father for being a witch. Instantly, the blacksmith hugs Vasilina as he tells her that he loves her dearly. Then he gives her the adult doll back. Thereafter, Vasilina says that her doll tells her they need to save GOGOL and the police chief because they are in danger. As the interrogation continues, the detective explains to Lisa how he's able to find out the Horseman's murder pattern. 60 years ago, the Horseman killed 13 women, and the 13th victim is a greasy woman who once died from accidentally choking a cherry stone. But a few minutes later, she came back to life when a man shook her hard, causing the cherry stone to come out. However, she was murdered after a month. Then 30 years ago, the same murder pattern happened again. 13 women were killed, and the 13th victim is a young woman who once died from being struck by lightning, but she miraculously came back to life after 30 minutes. However, she was murdered after 2 days. From that, the detective realizes every 30 years, the Horseman will kill 12 women and 1 resurrected person. He then brought GOGOL with him in the village to use him as bait, since he was dead at birth but also somehow brought back to life. But for some reason, the Horseman wouldn't take the bait. Instead, the Horseman resurrected Oksana and killed her again. Lisa then admits that she wasn't able to kill GOGOL because she has feelings for him. Afterward, the detective discloses that he'll hand her over to a secret society. He admits that he's a part of the secret society, which aims to know the secret to eternal life, and they think Lisa knows the secret. Lisa doesn't want to share it, so the detective threatens her that they will hurt GOGOL if she doesn't cooperate. Unbeknownst to the detective, GOGOL and the police chief hear his confession. To stop the detective's dark intention, the police chief shoots Lisa. To rescue Lisa, GOGOL removes the enchanted ring around her neck. She then transforms into the Horseman again and fights against the detective and the police chief. She throws the detective, knocking him out. Then she stabs the police chief in his hand. Lisa admits to GOGOL that she loves her and asks for his forgiveness. But GOGOL expresses his disappointment because she killed innocent people. While they are talking, the old maid in the restaurant arrives. It's then revealed that the old maid is Lisa's sister. When she died, the devil allowed her to go back to the living world and seek revenge on Lisa. He turned her into an old lady to make sure she'll not enjoy her stay on Earth, and her youth can only be restored if she succeeds in her revenge. Using black magic, the sister lifts Lisa into the air. She says that she'll kill GOGOL, just like how Lisa killed her beloved warlock. Right then, Vasilina and some others arrive at the mansion. However, Vasilina locks the door and prohibits the muscular men from going inside with her, possibly because it's too dangerous for those men's muscles. The police chief tries to stop Lisa's sister, but she kills him with black magic. Then she stabs GOGOL and knocks Lisa to the ground. GOGOL pleads with Lisa to transform into the Horseman and use her power against her evil sister so she can survive. But Lisa refuses. Instead, she uses her power to heal GOGOL. Unfortunately, the sister brutally beheads Lisa. When she is about to kill GOGOL, Vasilina arrives, and her doll rushes to help, causing the sister to be set on fire and have her face burned. While the sister is distracted, GOGOL takes the enchanted ring and locks it around her neck. Then the detective suddenly praises GOGOL for arresting Lisa's evil sister. He even offers GOGOL a position in the secret society, but he refuses because he doesn't want to be associated with someone like him. GOGOL wants to kill the detective, but he doesn't want his hand to be stained with blood. In the morning, before the detective leaves with Lisa's sister, he reminds everyone to keep everything secret, or else they'll be punished by the secret society. Afterward, they sadly bury the police chief, and GOGOL and Oksana bid goodbye to each other. GOGOL is brokenhearted as he goes back to the city. One day, as he stares at Lisa's brooch, his passion for writing returns. He then writes a book about his adventures in the mysterious village, which becomes a hit later. The movie ends at GOGOL's book signing, where a witch shows up. When she's about to hurt GOGOL, a critic whom GOGOL fears arrives and stabs the witch. The critic knows that GOGOL is aware of the secret society, so he asks him to be a part of their fraternity that fights against it. GOGOL agrees eventually. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.